The Ford Galaxie lineup has been everything from a big family cruiser to a fire-breathing drag-strip-ready monster. Not many cars have worn so many hats over their production run. And while the Galaxie was built from 1959 through 74, there was one brief moment in that timeline when Ford created something truly special, something that would go on to become one of the most iconic and striking full-size cars ever made. And as wild as the design was, Ford had a secret weapon hiding under the hood that really brought it all together. This is the story of the 1960 to 1961. Ford Starliner, the Ford Galaxie, made its debut in 1959, kicking off a fresh new chapter in Ford's full-size car lineup. It came in all the classic body styles: coues, sedans, convertibles, and even wagons. Ford fully embraced the cultural vibe of the time by giving these cars space-themed names like the Galaxie Starliner, Skyliner, and Sunliner. And with the space race heating up that was no accident, Ford wanted people to connect these cars with the excitement, progress, and futuristic appeal of space exploration. Now, in those early days, the Galaxie and the Fairlane were basically the same car. Underneath the Fairlane was a stripped-down, more utilitarian version, while the Galaxie sat a bit higher on the food chain, offering more comfort and better features. Styling-wise, the 1959 model still carried a lot of that 50s DNA, but when 1960 rolled around, both the Fairlane and the Galaxie got a total redesign, and it looked like they had just stepped out of the future. The early 60s brought in a whole new design language, cleaner lines, softer shapes, and an overall more refined look. The big tail fins were still there, but they were far more subtle. Everything about the new cars felt smoother and more forward-thinking when people compared the boxier, more flamboyant 59 models to the sleek, futuristic 1960s. It was like night and day, two completely different animals. Now, the Starliner wasn't a separate model on its own. It was actually a special trim within the Galaxie lineup, but it stood out in a big way thanks to its fastback roofline. That long sweeping roof gave the car a dramatic aerodynamic look that was totally different from the standard Galaxie's more traditional roof styles. Even from a distance, you knew you were looking at something special. And the space-age theme didn't stop at the name. The Starliner came loaded with futuristic details like its unique half-moon taillights and the trio of circular trim pieces on the rear roof pillars. Back in 1960, the styling was definitely a bit bold for some tastes, but fast forward to today, and those very design cues are what make the Starliner so beloved, especially the 1961 version, which refined the look even further and took the cool factor up a notch. Of course, with a car that looked this wild and futuristic, Ford couldn't exactly stick a boring engine under the hood, and thankfully they didn't. For the 1960 model year, Ford brought out the 352 cubic inch V8 as the headline act. This engine was part of the new FE or Ford Edsel engine family, which had replaced the aging YB block back in 1958, and for the Starliner, the 352 came in three distinct versions. First, there was the 2-aero version making 220 horsepower and 336 pound-feet of torque. Then you had the 4-barrel version, which bumped things up to 300 horsepower and 381 pound-feet of torque. And at the top of the range, there was the high-performance 4-barrel setup cranking out a serious 360 horsepower and 360 pound-feet of torque. That high-output version was actually a big deal. It marked the first time a factory Ford engine produced more horsepower than it had cubic, in which was a major milestone back then. Now, technically, buyers also had the option to go with the smaller 2.92 V8, which put out just 185 horsepower. But let's be honest, almost nobody got excited about that when the 352 and its top spec was nearly doubling the power. The 292 was basically a footnote in terms of performance. The base 4-barrel 352 was a bit underwhelming. Motor Life magazine tested it back in the day and clocked a quarter-mile time of 20 seconds flat. Not exactly thrilling, but the hypo version that changed the game. It ran the quarter mile in just 14.8 seconds over, 5 seconds faster. That's a night and day difference. The high-performance Starliners also got some real mechanical upgrades. We're talking bigger drum brakes, a beefed-up drive shaft, improved exhaust manifolds, and a steeper rear-end gear ratio at 356:1, and thanks to the mandatory manual transmission, no automatics allowed on the hypo cars, these things could really move. But here's the twist. The only manual transmission available at the time was a 3-speed column shift. No floor-mounted 4-speed, or was there? Here's where things start to get really interesting. By 1961, the Starliner was in its second and final model year, and the early days of the horsepower wars were already picking up steam. Ford knew it had to keep up with the competition, and that meant bringing some serious muscle to the table. Late in the 1961 model year, buyers who were in the know could check off a very special box, a Starliner equipped with the brand new 390 cubic inch V8, pumping out an impressive 375 horsepower. And unlike the earlier models, this one came paired with a proper floor-mounted 4-speed manual transmission. That combo, it officially turned the Starliner from a stylish cruiser into a full-blown performance machine. Now, as for how many were made, that's the tricky part. Exact production numbers are hard to come by, but from everything that's been dug up over the years, it looks like this was a one-year-only setup. And with that, it's safe to say that not many of these high-performance Starliners ever rolled off the line, but Ford wasn't done just yet. Also in late '61, Ford introduced something that really cranked the performance up a notch: a dealer-installed tri-power carburetor setup for the 390. Technically, this was meant for track use only, and it didn't come installed from the factory. Instead, it was delivered in the trunk, ready for the buyer or dealer to bolt it on later once installed. That tri-power setup pushed the output to a wild 401 horsepower, putting the Starliner firmly into serious speed territory, and thanks to that sleek sloped fastback roofline, the Starliner wasn't just fast, it was aerodynamic. That design made it Ford's go-to platform for NASCAR. At the time, the fastback created noticeably less drag at high speeds, giving Ford an edge on the oval. The 1961 model also saw a few visual tweaks to keep things fresh: a smoother, full-width grille, and more traditional round taillights, which replaced the earlier half-moon style inside the '61 Starliner, took things up a level. It had that cool early '60s futuristic vibe with body-cold metal panels, a wide horizontal speedometer, and toggle switches that looked like they were pulled straight from an aircraft. It felt modern, sleek, and a little bit like driving something from a sci-fi movie. Under the skin, the Starliner stuck to a familiar formula: body-on-frame construction with rear-leaf springs, nothing fancy from a suspension standpoint, but the car didn't need engineering wizardry to make an impact. It had presence, it had power, and it had a design that made people stop and stare. Unfortunately, 1961 marked the end of the road for the Starliner and its distinctive aerodynamic roofline. When the 1962 models rolled out, Ford had shifted to a more squared-off roof design, and that change had major consequences, especially on the NASCAR front. The new shape created more drag at high speeds, reportedly knocking off as much as 3 miles per hour on the big tracks in the world of competitive racing. That's a massive setback. Ford tried to get around the rules by fitting fiberglass fastback roofs onto their convertibles, hoping to recapture that lost aero advantage, but NASCAR wasn't having it. They shut that move down quickly. It wasn't until 1963 that Ford brought back a proper fastback roof on the Galaxie, which was clearly influenced by the lessons learned from the Starliner's short but impactful run. In many ways, the Starliner laid the foundation for Ford's later success in stock car racing. Its sleek shape wasn't just a design statement. It was a performance asset over its 2-year production run. Ford built just under 1 million Starliners. But when it comes to the high-performance variants, the ones with the Hypo 352S or the Ultra Rare 390E, the numbers are drastically lower. It's estimated that fewer than 10% of Starliners were equipped with the high-performance engines, and an even smaller slice of that pie came with the legendary 390 and 4-speed combo.